Welcome, Josh. Great, we get a chance to talk about alchemy.
Yes, it's exciting.
I've been waiting for this course for quite a while, and I had the pleasure of being involved in some designing planning conversations over the last 2 years. And now that we've set a date, you've created a curriculum, and some people have voiced interest. Some people have signed up already as well, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But we've got some questions from the community, and the main thing I would like to say, starting with, I think the basic frame is 2 residential weeks separated by a few months. The first week focusing on individual work, working with individuals, guiding them through a coaching process. And the second week, working with groups, facilitation. All of this is inspired by, but I think not limited to, the things that you're doing in P3 as a facilitator of deep emotional work.
Yes.
And to just group a few questions or a few areas of questions, I'm totally happy to tackle them in any order you like. People are interested in where outside of the P3 world, outside of the deep emotional work, can we use this? So what's the value, for instance, in my professional work as a leader, as a coach, as a whatever? Another question is about the content or the conceptualization of the content. There are archetypes and elements, alchemy. And I'm very curious, like, how do those map on the things that we do as coaches and facilitators?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
I think as an overview, just to start with that idea of like where this kind of work is valuable, I think over the years that I've been doing this stuff, I've always had this sort of sense, like since I started doing like these like experiential workshops, and I started doing, like, I was a counselor at a camp and doing things like, intentional communication and conflict resolution, and like understanding how to, like, I don't know, actually listen to someone when they're speaking and not immediately project my own story onto their story. I mean, when I went to my master's program as a therapist, I even there, I was kind of baffled by, there were some fundamental elements of being able to be with someone else or be in a team of other people, and witnessing people kind of missing these core components of how to hold space with each other. And I thought, like, I think I had an expectation of, well, when I get into my therapist program, clearly these are going to be people like me who have done some of this kind of work and are interested and have an inclination to that. And it was still missing. I've been a part of teams where, organizations in the workplace where just this stuff just doesn't happen. And we're using some sort of antiquated ways of, let me tell you who you are and push you in the direction I want you to go, even though it's not where you want. And I'm missing the sort of implicit signals that people are giving off. So when we first started doing this training, it was intended to be an instructor's training for P3 workshops to do this deep experiential emotional agility stuff. And I think halfway through the training, we quickly realized, like, this is just stuff that everybody needs. Like, the people who were taking the first training were like, this is helping me at my job. This is helping me in my romantic relationships. This is helping me in this area. I'm a better parent. I'm a better brother. I'm a better person, So
I think leading relationships is a key here as well, right? So consciously beginning relationships, consciously developing relationships, setting boundaries, as you said, listening and separating what you said from what I projected onto it, and all of these things, navigating conflict, navigating differences and similarities, and learning about each other, learning about ourselves, all of the little bumps that get in the way while we're doing that. And also how we pay attention. How do I pay attention to myself while I'm in relationship with you? How do I pay attention to you? And how do we both pay attention to the relationship? And when do we need to pay attention to which? Depending on where we are and what happens.
And paying attention to the signals of, like, hey, this is a moment to lean in and focus. We're no longer just in the exactly. We're no longer just in the relationship. Something just happened, and this is a cue to tune in. It's like being able to identify those moments and knowing what to do when is important.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the metaphor of alchemy was just one that I've just always liked. And Carl Jung was really big into alchemy and like to the metaphor of the symbolism associated with this idea of like, what is it? Transmutation, lesser elements into greater elements, that sort of thing, lead into gold.
Yeah.
And he used that metaphor very much so in the context of not looking at it as like literally trying to turn lead into gold as the alchemical process, but this idea of the like internal development of the person in attempting to perfect things and attempting to strive for better and better levels of being. Carl Jung was really, really big into that. So when we came up with that as a name for the training, everything else just kind of fell into place. And we're like, oh, well, alchemy has the 4 elements. And then as we started looking into the 4 elements, we realized these seem like very core components of the type of work that we're suggesting people do. And the model, it feels, kind of wrote itself after that. It just all started kind of falling into place. So we use the 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire, as sort of symbols of like bodies of knowledge or ways in which we show up in the work. So for the first week, when we're doing just the one-on-one coaching elements, it's understanding what each one does. So with earth, we always start with earth. Earth is foundations. So it's composed of a few things. One is, coming with a sense of my own value system, my intentions for why I'm showing up for a person, why I'm going to hold space, why I'm doing anything that is in the realm of leadership or helpfulness. Then with that, we build 2 things. I have to build a library. So earth is all about all the theoretical knowledge and all of the tools in the toolbox and all the things we collect that allow us to show up in the space. So with this, I think I used to have this mentality of like, I've got to learn the best modalities and the best tools because then I'll be the best therapist or coach or whatever. And I've just seen this over the years. I mean, I've encountered coaches, leaders who are profoundly amazing at what they do, and they use different tools than I do because they know how to use those tools and they have a relationship with those tools. It's not so important that you have the perfect tool, it's that you have the perfect ones for you. So there's tools that we'll explore in the training, but the element of this is find the ones that if you love nonviolent communication over clean language, pick it, use it. It's something that you are very familiar with. If you're skilled with a hammer, use the hammer. So build the library. Read the books, know the modalities, understand the map. Even though the map isn't the terrain, memorize the map so you can refer back to it. The second thing with earth element is building containers, meaning the spaces in which we do this kind of work. So building a container could be like, for me, oftentimes, if we're doing a workshop, it's like I'm looking at the venue and I want to know that we have all the things that we need. Do we have a room that is private enough that we're allowed to explore emotional processing and so forth that's conducive to our safety, that no one's going to walk through? We're not at a hotel conference center where someone's going to be moving in or popping in and out. That's a container building element. But also container building is, I heard you say something that was concerning to me, and I'd like to drop into a conversation that is a bit more intentional so we can clean this up. Building the container would be, I noticed you said something and I'm wondering if we could talk about that in a really serious way. Is right now a good time to talk? Can we step aside? Can we go into another? Can we do something to where we create the space between us to be a bit safer, to house and to hold a more intentional conversation? Like that metaphorical container is necessary. And if we don't do that, we wonder why things went wrong later. We wonder, it's like, well, like I didn't have a structure to actually do this in, so therefore it fell apart. So a lot of times this happens where like, like when I was going through therapy, when I was going through school, the most common thing we hear is like, don't therapize me. It's like we're just, everyone's practicing on everyone. So like you're just having these conversations and like you want to process and you want to dig at people, but you don't have the container yet. And it's like you feel this resistance of like, nope, things are not yet safe. I don't have trust. We haven't built rapport. There's no container for us to be able to exist in.
Contracting is an important element of that. And as
Contracting.
you said, simple space, like space needs to fit attention. So the container and the tools, those would be the earth elements, the toolbox, the models, the knowledge, and the container. Those would be the earth elements.
Yeah, and I talk about this in sort of an order of like earth, water, air, fire, but earth is something that we're always attending to. We're always attending to the container. We're always checking on it. If there's something that feels like it's like, we're getting a little too intense, or this is stretching beyond what we can hold, then we have to go back to it, and we have to, okay, let's change something here. You know what? Let me close the door. Can we pause for a second? Let's go take a deep breath, because this is getting to a point where we need more. We need more resources. We need more help in building this container.
Beautiful.
Once you have the container, then we move to water. And I this isn't intentional, but I just like the idea of like, you have a container, you fill it with water. Like, and can that water be held in that container? Water is, it's about the way that I talk about this is evocative feeling. I use those two terms intentionally. The evocative part is that I am not going to direct what shows up in the container. It's not fair of me as someone who is creating that space to say, now you fill it with this ingredient. And like, it'd be interesting as like as a therapist, someone comes into my office and I say, tell me all of the sadness you have. And it's like, I just sat down. Like, can I tell you a little bit about who I am? Like allowing the person to direct the process, allowing the team to direct the process. It's like, we're just showing up here. You get to fill it. And my job with that water element is allowing that whatever to be filled, making it right, making it okay, validating it, empathizing with it. You know, when we do workshops that are very deep and experiential, a lot of this, you know, like things like trauma can show up in the room at this point, deep emotional experiences. But even, you know, just saying like, I just need to say, I'm really pissed off right now. It's like, you're really pissed off. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about what's really pissing you off, as opposed to, well, why are you pissed off? You should, like, what's going on? Is everything okay? You had a great day today. And I'm pushing against that. I'm not actually allowing you to have the experience you're having. So holding that space for whatever shows up, I'm going to allow to show up. And in fact, I'm going to deepen it. I'm going to intentionally.
You're adjusting the container so that flow can happen with the emotions, or the water can flow.
Yes. And go where it needs to go. So a lot of this is focused on emotion, but it's not just emotional catharsis. It's this idea of like, let's follow this to see where it is leading. You know, this, there's a mindset behind this that emotions are very, not only useful, but they're also intentional. They have a information that comes with them. You know, Carlin Claren's kind of work. Like the emotion I'm experiencing has information embedded in it. It's not right for me to disregard that. So deepening those experiences, allowing people to go to the end of that emotion to be able to see what's on the other side of it. One of the key components of that space is empathy and validation. I preach these things over and over and over again. If there's only two tools I could teach to people in romantic relationships and parenting and every form of life, it'd be like how to just allow people to feel what they're feeling, acknowledge those feelings, and then validate them for that. It makes sense that you feel this because, and can I step into your world? You know, that idea of, I think I've heard you say this, you know, it's a mark of intelligence to be able to hold two conflicting worldviews in our mind at one time. It's one of the hardest things to do. It requires such a different understanding of the world. It's a mindfulness technique, actually, to be able to say, I can hold your world and my world in my mind simultaneously. And the ability to do that is such a profound safety building component that I don't actually have to negate your experience with my experience. I don't have to project my story onto your story. I can just postpone for a little while and let you be you. That in and of itself deepens that space. With the air component, air is about attending to our beliefs, our thoughts, our perceptions, the story that we make up about everything that's going on. It's the cognitive stuff. And with this, whereas with water, we're talking about validating, acknowledging, and deepening those emotional experiences. With air, this is where as leaders, as facilitators, as coaches, we get to start playing with this idea of like, where's the script need editing? Let's understand how this story came to be. Let's understand the mechanics of it. Which pieces are really important? Which ones are not? At P3, I always say, all beliefs are false, only some are helpful. The beliefs that I attach to the world are looking at the entirety of the universe through a keyhole. I'm missing some things, right? I'm omitting a lot of information. So making sure that those beliefs, the way that I'm approaching the situation, is helpful and valid. We can't do that until we've created a safe space and we've acknowledged the intensity of emotion and held, the containers so that we can express all of that. I haven't earned the right to change your belief systems until I deeply understand who you are. So this is the reason why it goes in this order. In this space as well, this is where things like reframing come into play. This is where things like strategizing and understanding, how can we see this? Is there some other possibility that's going on that perhaps has evaded your perspective so far? Let's have some interesting dynamics and back and forth kind of questions around this. When coaching with teams, it's like, okay, what's the nature of the problem and how do we understand it as a group? And this is where people start jumping in and adding things. It's easy to skip to this one too soon. Like, well, maybe we're looking at it from the wrong perspective, and then we miss it because we don't understand how we got there. So this is another reason why it's important to make sure we have all of these elements first. And then fire is action, and it's directive action. And it's the reason why it's last, is because I don't, as a coach or a leader, I don't want to direct you until I really understand where we're going. It's not fair of me to do so. And fire is one that can easily, I think, be the most abused element, which is another reason why it comes last, is I don't want to push you in a direction you don't want to go. I don't want to attach my agenda to your life. I don't want to tell you what to do. And also, I don't want to give you solutions too soon, because I think we all do this in some capacity when we're like not really like paying a lot of attention. Someone says, I can't believe this happened to me. Like, my job is doing that. You should just quit. You should just quit your job. There's plenty of jobs out there. It's like, that's a great direction, but it might not be the one that they need. And additionally, there's such a difference in value of something that we're given versus something we discover for ourselves. Maybe if I feel heard, seen, acknowledged, understood, given the space to experience what I'm feeling and the awareness to see how I'm looking at the situation, I'll come up with my solution on my own. And then it belongs to me, and it actually feels much more valuable to me. It's like, no, this is something I discovered as opposed to something I was told to do. The other thing with fire element is understanding this ability to like how to navigate feedback, how to navigate confrontation, how to be able to like give information in a way that doesn't cram it down someone else's throat, and it doesn't diminish their ability to refute it. Like, how do we have this ability to say, here's my information, here's what I'm going to contribute to the story. I'm going to give you my perspective, and you're allowed to push back. And we feel like we can have this, sort of back and forth dynamic where it feels creative. This is the term that I heard recently that I love about this is like, we're not calling people out, we're calling people forth. Like, I want to acknowledge and deeply understand who you are, and I want to call you forth to the version of yourself you've stated you want to be. That's powerful. As opposed to
my responsibility.
Exactly. And I can align with that. It's like, wow, you seem to know my values, you know my integrity, and you're saying that I'm not living up to those things I just said were really important to me. Yeah, I can see that. Thank you. You're calling me forth, as opposed to making me feel shame about something I might not be doing, because shame's a horrible motivator. Causes people to freeze, and they might stop doing what they're doing wrong, but they won't do anything aspirational after that. So the idea with these 4 elements is building this sort of overarching foundation of how do we show up in a way that is helpful, and then coincidentally, this kind of gives us a bit of a diagnostic tool as well, which means if I'm working with a group or an individual or anyone really, and I sense this, like, we're trying to dig into like what's really like wrong or hurting or upsetting you right now, and you're giving me a lot of resistance, it's probably because you don't feel safe. I haven't earned rapport with you. We don't have a container yet. Like, I can sense that we're not able to get there because there's something before that needs to happen. If I realize that I'm providing you solutions and you're saying, no, that's not going to work, no, that's not it, no, you just don't understand, well, I need to move back in the cycle a bit to some more foundational elements so that I can earn the right to go there.
And I can absolutely see in which less emotional work situations these skills would come in very handy. First of all, for any kind of leadership role, for self-regulation. Like, anytime I fail with something, and I feel ashamed, for instance, to just pick up that bit from a minute ago, I can understand, okay, what does that emotion tell me? Maybe it's not the time and space at work, but I can choose to take space and time to explore the emotion, maybe with some help of a friend or whatever. So that I then can use this knowledge to help myself be a better leader, be a better coach in any role. The other thing is, if as soon as I'm holding space for people, these things happen. They're not always extreme, like emotions happen all the time, right? And people engage because they like something, and people disengage because they don't like something. And this is emotions at work. And in any group of people, you have beliefs. You have beliefs that are shared, and some that are not shared. You have some that are explicit and some that are implicit, and lots of conflation of things that are said, things that are meant, things that are interpreted by others, and all of this. And with this knowledge and this framework, or these different lenses, as I'm viewing what's happening in any team, for instance, I'm participating in, or any situation I'm participating in, I can use the knowledge that I'm gaining in this course to get better at navigating it, and just having more options.
Yeah, and I think
one way in which this is useful to any person who wants to increase their, you could say, self-management skills, self-leadership skills, but also navigation of interesting situation skills, which are probably useful in any job, even if you are a teacher or anyone working with other people, basically.
Yeah, if you're a human being that interacts with other human beings, you'll find some use in this. And there's another element to this as well, in the sense of we all have elements of, like, we have aspects of these different elements. We have ability to attend to people. I mean, like, there's always that one friend where it's like, wow, I don't know why I feel so safe talking to you. It's like, that's someone who gives you a lot of content. They give you safety. They give you rapport. You give you a sense that you can go to that deeper aspect of things. I think I didn't realize how much I knew about this stuff until I started doing the training, and like realizing, wow, that's what that's called. I've always had this sort of muscle memory of how to attend to this thing with people, or I know how to give really good feedback and really good direction. I just never knew what it was. I never knew what it was called. It was just something that I did, which is another value of these kinds of trainings, is that it'll kind of put it all into a framework where it's no longer that I'm just operating from a perspective of like, this is just what I felt led to do, so I did it. And it's like, no, this is what I did, and this is why I did it. I know exactly how I'm using this tool. It's no longer this sort of just implicit sense. It's like cognitively, I'm aware of exactly what I'm doing when I'm doing it, which makes me better at utilizing those tools.
Beautiful.
So the first week of Alchemy is the foundations. It's all about these 4 elements, how they come together, and then also some more advanced skills we'll explore later on in the week, because we do a lot of practice. There's a lot of like, I'm going to be both the client and the coach, and we kind of switch back and forth and test these things out. When we get later into the week, we'll get into some skills that involve mixing of the elements. One of these, for example, is the spitting in the soup dynamic, which is developed by Alfred Adler. It's like how to identify the way in which someone is living their life with a lot of rapport, with a lot of investment in who they are, and helping expose some incongruencies in the way that they're actually thinking and living, and bringing about change from a very intrinsic place within that person, not my direction of here's what you should do kind of stuff. Directed reflections are another one of this, like where I'm moving away from evocative into the directive element, but I'm directing with a lot of intention around highlighting strengths and bolstering something that perhaps people cannot see. I'm reaching in with a microscope and I'm picking out like key elements of who a person is and showing them to them. This is some of the more advanced skills of like knowing how to do this. So that's all the week 1, just learning how to be a person with another person, creating some kind of change or transformation or holding space with them. Week 2 takes everything from week 1 and builds upon it. in the form of how to do this when we are no longer able to do one-on-one conversations, one-on-one interactions, but group dynamics. What happens when I have a group larger than my ability to attend individually to all the people? And that's kind of how I define large group. Like, what is a large group for one person may be very different from someone else. And it's also different given the type of group you have. You know, if you're doing your daily stand-up at work, like that's a different, you could probably manage more people than if you were doing a trauma workshop talking about childhood experiences. Like what large is now changes drastically. So the tools are still the same, in which once that happens, it is no longer helpful for me to treat this as a collection of individuals, but rather treating the group as an entity in itself. And there's different ways that we attend to that. We still do these sort of core elements, but we move from this idea of the elements into 4 different archetypes. And the archetypes are the sovereign, right? The ruler, the leader, the lover, the magician, and the warrior. And the basis of these, they line up a lot with the elements. All right. And again, this is just one of those sort of, the model just kind of wrote itself sort of thing. It was really nice.
Alchemy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it all lines together. But with the sovereign archetype, it's about taking ownership for the influence that we have. It's about leading, sort of having our view over the dominion that we rule. So when this aligns a lot with earth elements of like creating a foundation, building a container, but it's also about attending to the group. It's about holding the vision of what it is that I intend to achieve with this group of people, so that I am the one who's kind of holding the torch the whole way, that people can always come back to me. It's not that they're not autonomous and they're not able to live their lives completely, but they know that there's someone there holding this vision of where it is that we are going. There's someone there who is always, no matter what, minding the compass, right? And then additionally, part of that is about acknowledging the group and sort of attending to their needs from an overarching view, that I can kind of see everything at all times, and I'm able to nurture the group as it is, understanding where they are, and then redirecting them when it is need to. It's like, hey, it feels like we're a little bit off course right now. We're not really doing what we said we intended to do. Let's talk about that. Let's explore that. The Lover Archetype, which is probably one of my favorites, actually. The Lover Archetype is, even though it's sort of associated with water, it's not just about feeling. And when we get into the Lover Archetype, it's about full experience of what is. The Lover Archetype is about being fully alive, experiencing the light and the dark, going to feeling our sorrow, feeling our joy, allowing ourselves to have access to full expression. It's widening the window of experience, right? So, my God, this food tastes delicious, and I just love that we get to have this thing at work. And did you see the new coffee machine that got installed? Oh my God, it's like fully reveling in that. The reason why I love the Lover Archetype is it's this constant like pulse of what it means to be human. Right? I'm not separating myself into like little chunks. I'm not dissociating the parts of who I am. I'm bringing all of it together into this moment. All aspects of me are welcome and allowed to have expression in this. So,
and allowing everyone else to also express themselves, like loving people's potential into existence.
Yeah,
is one of my favorite phrases, that we have a space and also an ability to bless everything that comes, and therefore give it an ability to show up. And then as it's seen, especially when things are seen that are usually not seen, but with the attention, they get to transform into something that has utility, that has reason for existence, that has purpose. And while it was hidden in the shadow, it hurt and it felt bad, and we created shame, whatever. But as soon as we create a space where these unloved things can be loved, then things get to change. And this is something that to me deeply resonates with organizational work. For instance, I would use different words then. I wouldn't use love, but if I'm working with a group and trying to teach them something, and I have someone who is like, I can hate that person. I can see their resistance, as a fighting of my greater intention, right? And that doesn't get us anywhere. Or I can love that this person, or appreciate, let's say appreciate instead of love. I can appreciate that this person cares enough to show that something doesn't work for them. And that if I get to connect to that care, if I get connected to the thing that they want to achieve with this currently for me not very productive behavior, then I might connect with them on a deeper level, on another level that then lets them bring out what they really want to say, or what really matters to them, or how they really can contribute to the thing. And that I've seen that approach transform group dynamics, especially in organizations with conflict and with a lot involved in organizations where somebody wants to change something and other people say that will never work. And in those kind of situations, which every leader sometimes faces, it's really great to train your ability to bring everyone in, at least so that they can watch out for the risks they fear as part of the group, instead of being excluded because they resist. And so this lover quality in leaders is extremely important, so that we also all of this thing like inclusion, diversity. These are so big words right now, and there's such a hype around them. But the simple truth is, can I create a space where in my heart, every one of you, no matter how you're showing up, is okay to show up the way you show up? Like, can my heart love all of what you are bringing to this space and to this team that I want to create? And that I think that's a really important leadership quality, especially with all of the complexity and all of the change and agility and whatnot that we want to create in organizations. This is an absolute key leadership skill. All of them are, but I just wanted to, because lover is not a thing that people usually talk about at work. And if somebody wants to go to this course and asks their boss for, hey, can you pay for this?
Help me be a better lover.
You want to become a better lover? No, go pay for that yourself. This is how that makes sense in a business context. Even if you're in a very professional, rational, true inclusion needs this kind of stance. If you call it acceptance, if you call it love, if you call it embracing, the word does matter not that much, but the stance in a leader and finding that in yourself, training that. I think that's where we can learn from you how to show up in a way that it has this evocative quality, not only for emotions. Like, it's important for emotions, and emotions are important, but to invite people to bring their best.
Yeah. And their worst and all parts of themselves. And I think the key component with the lover archetype is this idea of like all parts are welcome, and it's differentiating aspects and ways that I'm feeling and ways that I'm experiencing things from behaviors. That's something that comes much later. And a lot of times what our fear is about inclusivity and allowing for this stuff is either one, well, if we're all coming together, then we're all going to just get blended up into this, sort of homogenous soup, and I'll lose all of my interestingness. I'll lose all of the differentiation I have. It's like, that is not what the lover is about. The lover is about embracing all of those interesting, different, and extreme parts, and that they all get a seat at the table. Every aspect of us gets a seat on the bus. Whereas behaviors are something that we can always tinker with and assess and say, which one is in most value to us? Which one is in the highest service to our goals and our intentions and what it is that we're trying to achieve? And making that distinction really, really deliberately. Yeah, so this element of fully experiencing and allowing for these things to show up. These, as we're describing, like the sovereign, the lover, the magician, these don't necessarily go in a sort of cyclical order as much as these are mindsets to approach. So I'm describing them in this way, but this is not necessarily how we embody them. The magician, which I always go back and forth between lover and magician. Magician is the archetype that I embody the most as a therapist. Magicians are we're the transformers of the space, right? Magicians are, the intent behind a magician is to be able to help us sort of fully go to this realm of utilizing all of the magic in the room, like these elemental pieces of interactions between people, of group dynamics. It's understanding that the sum, or like the whole, is greater than the sum of its parts. Magicians are very interested in interactions. They're very interested in, like, what are these linchpin experiences? You know, if I just pull on this thread right here, watch how everything falls into order. The magician archetype is our ability to embrace our influence on the whole, understanding that in a very, very subtle way, we can create dramatic change, intentional change in our environment, in a team, in those around us. So magician archetype is very near and dear to my heart. Magicians are also, this is where we get elements of things like adding humor in a way that is additive. Right, being able to story tell, being able to like create this sort of like immersive experience of what it means to be here and interacting with everyone. We all know those people who can like crack a joke at the most inopportune time because it's like, this feels a little too intense and I don't like this. Let's evacuate the space. Magicians know how to utilize the space of, I'm going to add humor. I'm going to add an enlivening of this process so that we can all take a breath and then go even deeper into what it is that we're focusing on so that we can re-engage and enter into this. Magicians are also involved in the dissolution of our ego, which is a really important component of leadership in any kind. It's like, not to shame ego, because that's a conversation that can oftentimes say, oh, that's just your ego. It's like, ego is protections. It's the armor that we wear. And for magicians, the interest is, can we strip off some of this armor so that you can actually grow bigger muscles, that you can actually be more of who you are and see who your true intent is, being able to express more fully. This one's very near and dear to my heart. And also it's important to understand that the magician kind of works a bit in the background. The magician is not the sage on stage. It's the guide on the side. It's the one who is saying, from over here, I can direct the other rulers in the room. I can direct the sovereignty of the room so that it can now make its own decisions better. It's an advisor. It's someone who guides from the side. That's a really important element of this, because a lot of times if we try to think that I'm the one who's creating all the transformations, like, well, then we're not dissolving our own ego in the process. We're taking ownership for what is not ours to claim. And then the last one is the warrior archetype, which is the just for lack of a better term, the get shit done archetype. It's the one that fights the battles that need fighting. It's the one that stands up for what is right. The warrior archetype is our ability to embody our true sort of virtues and discipline. I think it's part of the archetype that I respect and admire the most. Warrior archetypes, people who have this energy in them, are the ones who, I wake up every single day at this time and I have this regimented practice. I make sure I work out and I meditate and I go to work, and this is how I do my work. And it's like, you're like a well-oiled machine. How do you do all this stuff? It's this quality of discipline that I do the hard thing because I know it's good for me. I know it's going to yield the kind of life I want to live. I think there's a quote that's like, hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life. Warriors choose the hard choices. And additionally, with the warrior element, there's this emphasis on, we are like, the training never stops. I am never going to cease training and practicing and engaging in the mastery of who I am. It's this constant striving for that element of just, I want to be as good at this as I possibly can from an aspirational standpoint.
Which means there's also humility coming in with the warrior.
Yes,
because the warrior is also in service of the sovereign, and also in service of the group. Like, the warrior is taking care of things that need taking care of in service of the group, and So another quote that comes to my mind is "Leaders eat last."
Yeah.
So the warrior is also the leadership stance that I would call forth when the group needs my protection, when something in the group needs correction, when boundaries are about to be crossed or have been crossed, to reestablish the boundaries so that safety can grow again. So it's a difficult role for many of us.
Yes.
But it's also, it's one where a lot of safety comes from, not unsurprisingly.
Yeah, and the warrior archetype shines the most when it's connected to the group, when it's connected to the needs of the group, and that it's allowed, because we wouldn't want to embody the warrior energy when we're in the space of like creating the container and like sort of diving into like what is the unconscious and implicit stuff. It's like, well, what we need to do is we need to move forward in this way. It's like that's one of those moments where it's like, hold on a second, we're going to get there. Like, we don't yet need to go right into that moment of like, let's fight the fight and let's get out there and like, let's stop complaining about it and move into action. It's like, almost there's a timing element of this. We want to make sure that energy comes from this space of, I know my intentions, I know the group goals, I know where we are focusing and what it is that we're driving toward, and we know why.
And I'm assuming we'll be working on traps like these as well, so that we become aware of, like, for instance, Sovereign and Warrior, I'm assuming, could easily slide into rescuer and persecutor patterns from the drama triangle.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
This is not something that we want to embody as leaders. So again, these are core leadership qualities. So specifically, the facilitation bit in the second week is to me an absolute must-have for managers, for leaders. I think, like, from my experience as a leadership coach, as a leadership trainer, facilitation is the key under-trained leadership and management skill. Like, working with groups, and especially the stuff that we covered in the past, 15 minutes or so of this conversation. This is so important that leaders become aware of this. They train these skills, that we know which of these archetypes come to us easily, with these not so easily. How can we switch fluently between them elegantly without like losing one or the other? Because in the end, to be great at leadership, and this doesn't need to be one person in the group, but all of these need to be present enough for the things that you mentioned earlier about the elements, like the container to be safe and flexible, direction, things to be challenged, and new action to be taken, and all of this. So it plays together very nicely. So
and that aspect of, I don't have to be all four archetypes. Like, if I'm the facilitator of a team, I don't have to be all four of these archetypes at any one moment. I just need to make sure that they're all present. And this is one of those dynamics that come into facilitation, is there's almost this sort of principle that we stick to all the time, is never do for the group what the group can effectively do for itself.
Yes.
If there is a wealth of lover energy in the room, I don't need to also embody that. I don't need to hold that space. It's already covered. If there's a lot of warriors in the room, it's like, great, we are ready to do that. Let's fill in the gaps and see what else is missing here. And additionally, this idea of like, how does this all applies in being a leader is, there's this aspect of being able to see what it is that a group is doing as rich and valuable and necessary. I think one of the worst things that I see with leaders with their teams is this avoidance of things that are uncomfortable, avoiding conflict, avoiding that kind of stuff. And it's like, I think it's Harville Hendricks that said, conflict is growth trying to happen. We don't want to neglect the friction of conflict that can create a really good fire later on, right? This kind of goes back to the alchemy metaphor of like turning lead into gold. Like, we need lead in order to have the lead that turns into gold. We need conflict. We need that ability to say, hey, something's coming up here and it's actually worthwhile. I'm going to encourage it as opposed to discouraging it. like, ooh, like we're not feeling so great today, and there's a lot of energy in the room. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's going on here so that maybe we can move through it.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And I think similarly to what I said with the first week, the second week of group facilitation has a lot. This one is a lot more dynamic in terms of the practice opportunities. Everyone in this space will be encouraged and invited to lead spaces and build containers and do all of the elemental work of cultivating the space where there's this shared sense of leadership throughout the entire week. Everyone can jump in and participate, where it's not going to be me and any co-facilitators I have like, okay, this is what we're going to do now. It's like at any moment, we all get to sort of pick up the pen and write the story and
Yes.
have that experience. We also will dive into some of the more advanced skills associated with like really powerful processing moments. One of the things that we utilize at P3, the empowerment walk, is a combination of so many of the elements and archetypal energies of what does it mean to take someone from point A to point B in their process, and being able to just sort of be extremely directive and focused and get flexible and evocative all at the same time, and knowing when to pivot where. It's one of the hardest exercises I know to facilitate, and still one of the most powerful because it embodies just about everything that we're teaching here.
Yes.
And good leaders that I've encountered, good facilitators have this ability to know what to use when. And it's after hours and hours of practice that they get to say, oh, I know that what we're missing right now is this. What we're missing right now is a bit of just empathy and holding space right now because something deep just happened. And before we skip over this, before we shallow out of the depth, we're going to sit here and just linger a little bit longer. And it's knowing when to do that, knowing the timing of it, that people who are experiencing it say, how did you do that? That was magical. And it's like, there's a science and an art to all of this.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. That leads me to one question that one of the participants has asked me to ask you in this interview. What kind of practice opportunities will there be in addition to the residential week that we're spending together? Is there anything like follow-up calls where we get to process something? Yeah. Will people get a chance to practice this, for instance, in future P3 courses? So that they get a chance to work with the group, things like that. Have you thought about that? Are there specific plans already?
Yes, the specific plans so far are, and we may add more and more experiences to this, just depending on what the group desires. But the baseline of that is that everyone will get at least a few supervision calls with me, to where we can talk about, after the one-on-one coaching, the first week, you get at least one or two supervision calls around working with people and dynamics and understanding that kind of process. And we'll also have group supervision calls where we can all come together and share our sort of collective wisdom of what we're getting out of doing this work for the months following. After the facilitation week, the second week, we're going to open up some opportunities for some group coaching opportunities where we'll do this via Zoom, so we can actually have participants, and it's all virtually, which, as you know, is not my favorite, but it offers a very unique opportunity where I get to sit in the background, just watching, not participating, and then offer very directive feedback on, this is what I saw you do here. You asked this question at this time. Tell me what was the thinking going on there? What was happening there? What stopped you from doing this instead? So on and so forth.
Yeah, that's
our
extremely
experiences
valuable.
with those.
I've seen you do that.
It's just catapults our skill set, because then we get to have this sense of like, okay, I get to like spend 2 hours with a group and then get immediate feedback on what I did. And it just laser focuses. That's right. I was thinking this, and then I did this. I need to pay attention to that next time. And we just sharpen ourselves so much faster.
Yeah.
As far as P3 is concerned and that sort of thing, there's still opportunities for new instructors there. That will be something based on interest, because not everybody wants to do the deep experiential emotional work. But I imagine that, a handful of people who go through say, yeah, that is my next step for facilitation and training. We also have other people on our team who are working on getting this kind of work into school systems and integrating it there. We have a lot of people who work in the corporate field and want to do classes and things around just specifically like, hey, let's do things around limiting beliefs and understanding how that affects the workplace and so forth. So I think there's places for P3, there's places for a lot of practice, and then there's opportunities outward where this kind of gets to my intention around the course. When we first designed this, the intent was to have more P3 facilitators because we wanted that workshop to just spread all over the world. And since COVID, actually, it just really shifted to this space of I know that P3 as a workshop is really amazing and powerful and brilliant. And yet I know that there are facilitators who have skills that are not my own, and they have the ability to bring this work into communities I will never speak in. And that it feels more interesting to me, that people can start to take this work and transform it into their own sort of style, their own ability to make change in their community, and then go transform it into something that they see fit.
Beautiful. So,
I've already seen this start to happen with some of the instructors that went through our first process, where they're starting to they're starting to make it their own process. They're making it their own magic that they're bringing into their lives. And that is something I'm really excited about, is creating sort of a network of people who are doing this powerful work and seeing where can we team up and make something really amazing in some corner of the globe.
Yeah. This is also something that I wanted to suggest. Like we have people in the P3 community. We will have people in that instructor/facilitator community that you are growing. And if we do a course in Europe with a dozen of us, there will be opportunities where we can work together and exercise these skills, develop them further, integrate them with the things we already do, etc. As for instance, you and I have done in creating this mastering relationship course that we've run a few times, and we're going to also run again this year. People have been asking.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that you would like to cover in this first interview about alchemy?
No, I'm just excited. This is I think since rewriting the curriculum for this, it's, as I said before, like the model kind of started writing itself. There's an element of, I'm excited to see what I get to learn from this process, because I don't have any illusions that I'm the expert at this and I'm just gonna devote I'm just gonna bestow this. And it's like, I learned so much from this process, and knowing the kind of people who are already signed up to show up, knowing the kind of people who this will inevitably call to, what really invigorates me is realizing that we're all coming with a level of skill and a level of brilliance. And it's still, to this day, it's really baffling to me how much that all compounds into something that I could just never expect. And I think that's what makes this work really exciting. You know, when all of this comes together, when we come together to sharpen ourselves against each other, this idea of iron sharpens iron, the product of that is just something that is so far beyond my greatest story of what it could be. And yeah, it keeps it interesting. It keeps it exciting. Keeps me wanting to do the work. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I would like to add to that. So ever since I first attended your course in Orlando in 2018, oh my God, this is going to be 5 years ago soon. Wow. I saw the quality of facilitation in you. There were other aspects of the course that I loved, but one thing that stood out, and that hasn't changed through all of the courses we've given together, which probably must be more than 10 by now, counting everything we did, all the conversations we had, working on this curriculum, discussing lots of other things. Like I've so far, and I've worked with really a lot of good facilitators in the last 20 years. But your ability to impress me with insight, with nuance, with conceptualization of the stuff that you do, that is not failing, hasn't failed to impress me again and again. And I'm saying this so that it's also on video and that people see this, because I know that many people know me who might see this and who might be interested in this course. And I'm attending this course because after 5 years then it will be 5 years, knowing you, of seeing your work, of talking about this work with you, I still expect to learn a lot. And there are not many courses that I go to where I expect to learn so much. So there will be things that we haven't even mentioned yet that will come out as learnings of this course. So it'll be worth the time and the money, I'm very sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.